how's it going? This is Joe Intel, and today we're taking a look at the HECO Aurora series consisting of the 300 bookshelves, the 700 towers, the Center 30, and the Sub 30A. If you've never heard of HECO before, it's because they're a German company that's been making speakers since 1949, but has only been introduced to the US market recently by the folks at Audio Advice. Let's get into it. For full disclosure, these were sent to me free for review by the folks at Audio Advice. They're a new channel sponsor, and I'm glad to have them. Now, I'm allowed to say whatever I want about the products they send me, and they have not reviewed this video prior. I will leave a link in the description to purchase this from Audio Advice. They offer free shipping and 30-day returns. You can also call them for expert advice, and they have a price guarantee. Let's start off by saying that looks matter. You can DSP a speaker all you want, but you aren't going to change the way a speaker looks, unless you're gonna wrap it in some kind of vinyl or paint it. Anyway, luckily these are nice looking speakers with extra attention to detail when it comes to things like the metal trim around the ports and the engraved metal up top. Are these some nice looking binding posts or what? And notice that even the bookshelf speakers have dual binding posts. I've seen many speakers where they have dual binding posts, but only for the towers. Now, I'll probably never buy a wire or buy amp my speakers, but I still like the fact that they offer that as an option. This is also the first time I've ever seen the baffle go over the front and up and around the top of the speaker. That looks really cool, and from my understanding, also helps to dampen the enclosure as well. Form and function, I like that. Now, if I'm to be honest, I think the faux veneer looks good, but I wish they would have opted for the type with more of a wood grain texture. They also offer these in an ebony black color. I got the ivory white, which comes with a satin gray grille. I would love to have seen something more like the grille that they use on their HECO Ambient series, as these can show slight imperfections when the light hits it a certain way. At least they're magnetic. Now, the bookshelf and center do come with built-in feet, and the floor standing speaker has some outriggers with the option to use these cool looking spikes or the same rubber feet as on the bookshelves. The driver layout on the Aurora 300 bookshelf consists of a 6.5 inch paper cone woofer. The Center 30 has dual 5 inch paper cone woofers in an MTM configuration, and the Aurora 700 towers have three 6.5 inch paper cone woofers in a 3-way configuration, with one of the woofers acting as a dedicated mid-range driver. Now, these aren't your ordinary paper. They call it Kraft paper. We're not talking about your typical Hobby Lobby paper. This is Kraft with a K, and it's a treated paper that's combined with wool fibers to make the driver more rigid. Personally, I think paper cones are great materials because they have good dampening properties. They're stiff and lightweight, which is what you want from a speaker cone. The 1-inch soft dome tweeter, common to all the speakers, are surrounded by a special waveguide. They call it their Fluktus tweeter, which is designed to help with dispersion properties. From my listening, it seems to work. More on that later. The other thing I noticed is that these speakers are heavier than most speakers their size. The reason is that they use nearly 1-inch thick cabinets, 0.94 MDF to be exact, compared to 3/4 MDF, which is typical for most speakers at this price point. What does that mean? It means that you have a more inert, rigid enclosure. Regarding the price point, these are much less expensive than you might expect based on their build quality. I'm going to provide a link in the description if you want to see the current pricing, as it may change. Let's just say that I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the price. Fit and finish don't mean much if the speaker doesn't deliver good sound, and these do. Here are some things that they all have in common. They have a very wide soundstage with apparent height aspects to them. This was impressive. The sweet spot was also wide, so I could enjoy the stereo imaging without having to be perfectly between both speakers. Is that because of the Fluktus waveguide design? I don't know. Maybe, possibly, probably. These have a higher than average sensitivity rating, but they didn't seem that sensitive in my testing based on comparing the relative loudness to less sensitive speakers. Without changing the volume on the AVR, they sounded about the same volume as some of these other speakers that had lower sensitivity ratings. They also didn't have as much deep bass extension as I expected based on the measurement specs given by HECO. My measurements confirm what I heard. These are capable of getting pretty loud without any audible distortion in my 20 by 20 foot room. Overall, my listening impressions suggested that they had a bit of treble boost and the bass was highly dependent on the position, as is true with most speakers. The obvious difference between the bookshelf and the 700 towers is that the floor standers have more bass extension. If you had to choose, I would prefer the floor standers to the bookshelves with stands based on just the looks and the extra output. If you do plan on going to the bookshelves and plan on using them with subs, you will still get very good sound. Now, to be clear, you should still use a sub with the floor standers. I'm also happy to say that the timbre or tonality of the center speaker matches the other speakers, and that's exactly what you want for a home theater setup. When something sweeps from left to right, the sound will remain consistent the whole entire way. Now, I wasn't expecting much from the 12-inch ported sub considering it's only rated at 250 watts and it's using a Class AB amplifier. But what it lacked in total output, it made up for with good response thanks to built-in DSP tuning. Its low frequency extension didn't measure quite as low as stated by HECO, but it's not terrible either. At its current price of $649, I can't say it would be my first choice, but I don't think it's a bad choice either. It just depends on your expectations. There are other subs at this price point that can play lower and louder, but these look pretty sexy though. Just saying. If that's important to you, go for it. On the back of that sub, you'll find the typical RCA inputs, volume control, variable crossover, auto on and off switch, and a 180-degree phase switch. It does have the same cool baffle design as the other speakers, and as of now, I only see it in the ebony black color. Overall, I can recommend the speakers with the caveat that the specs from HECO might be a bit generous, but that's okay because they still perform well. The build quality is high at this price point. The tonality is not completely neutral, but they are EQable, as you'll see from my measurements. Most people using these for home theater will likely apply some sort of DSP EQ correction anyway, so no issue there. If you're interested in a sound demo of the Aurora 700 floor standards, I'll leave a link in the description for a video I did with that. Stick around if you want to see my measurements for those speakers and explain how those measurements translate to my real world listening experiences. Here we are in REW. This is the listening window response of the HECO bookshelf speaker, and this is the on axis. More than likely you're going to get something that sounds more similar to this listening window one. As you can tell, with both of them, as you get on axis, it gets a little bit brighter. The treble response is a little hotter, but it's still a bit rising with the listening window response anyway. Looking at that listening window response, anything within this dark blue line is plus or minus 1 dB, and this light blue line is plus or minus 3 dB. And you can see that most of the time it's staying within plus or minus 3 dB, but it's going up around here, 200 Hertz. There might be something going on here. The minus 3 dB point is around 60 Hertz here. Now, my measurements aren't extremely accurate below, let's say 500 Hertz. I really wouldn't trust it that much. What I usually do is I take a near field response of the woofer by itself and the tweeter to kind of get an idea what they're actually doing. And you can see here, the woofer actually doesn't have this suck out. That's my room. You can see the crossover point is right around here, around 2.2 kilohertz. So I do something called a ghetto spinorama where I measure all around the speaker, and on axis response is this red, listening window is this, your sound power, which is how it responds all around the speaker, is this blue line. From those you can calculate the Directivity Index, and this will give you an idea of how well this will EQ. And so anywhere where this is kind of going up drastically, that might be a point where you may not be able to EQ it as well as you'd want. So maybe around here, maybe not as EQable as maybe something around this area. Now, if I take the response and I EQ it, I'd get something that's an estimated EQ'd response. And of course, you're probably not going to get a response this smooth, but it's nice to look at. Look, perfect speaker, you wish. So here is the measurement of the center channel speaker. As you can tell, above a certain frequency, it still follows the same trend as the bookshelf, and that's exactly what you want. If I take a look at the breakdown, here's the center tweeter and the center woofer. Of course, it's much higher in amplitude because I'm measuring very close. The center is a MTM design, so there are two woofers. There's one woofer, this is the second one, and they're doing the same exact thing for the most part. So if I do my ghetto Joe and Tell spinorama on this one, here's the listening window, here's on axis response, here's the sound power, and therefore you get this Directivity Index. This shows me that it's EQable around here, maybe not so much around this area, but over here, yeah, you could possibly EQ something around here. So there's a center channel listening window again, and this is the wishful thinking EQ response of that center channel. Again, we can only wish. So the 700 series floor standing speaker is a bit too large for me to do my ghetto spinorama on, so I'm only providing the listening window on axis response. And let's compare that to the center channel. All right, looks kind of similar. So in red is the bookshelf speaker, and you can see they all kind of have the same type of response. That's good. So looking at the floor standing speaker, this is the listening window response. This is the first woofer that's above the tweeter. This is the tweeter. This is one of the woofers. And here is that third woofer. Now, even though they're the same woofer, you can tell that this one is doing a different job than these other two woofers. They may have a different crossover point, but this is playing more as a mid-range, whereas these are doing mid-bass duty. So this is a 3-way configuration. In a 2.5-way, you would see that this mid-range actually is doing the same thing as the other two woofers. Here is a measurement of the port. The amplitude of the port, and this is measured very close, is very low in comparison to these. So you may not hear this as much as you would with other speakers where the tuning of that port is a bit higher. So again, this is the listening window response of the floor standing speakers, and this is the predicted EQ'd response. Yeah, right, but that would be nice. So this is the measurement of the subwoofer, the Sub 30A, and this is the near field response of the cone itself. And you see that this is maybe going down to around maybe 56 hertz, not too low, but because it's ported, you also have to measure the port, and this is what the port tuning does. If you combine those, you get an estimated sound power response, which is what you hear in room. And so let's say if this is 105 dB at this point, 3 dB down from that would be 102. So at minus 3 dB, we're at 27 hertz, not bad. So here, 6 decibels down, we're at 22 hertz. And at 10 decibels down, you're at 19 hertz. Typically what you want is 3 dB down to be at 20 hertz. These don't go that deep, so that's one of the downsides, but it can get pretty loud. On a positive note, this is a flat response thanks to built-in DSP, which makes this easier to blend with other speakers. All right, now let's place these on the speaker leaderboard. So here we are at the speaker leaderboard, the HECO Aurora 300 bookshelf speakers. Where do they place as far as best bookshelf? I would say this is about a good place. Above the Q Acoustics 3030Is, I think I like the soundstage on these a bit better. Right there next to the ELAC debut reference, which I think have a nicer finish and a nicer grill. Very close. It's up there with some of these big players. The Klipsch RP600M won many awards, so it's in good company. So in the best under $1,000 category, place the HECO Auroras above the ELAC Unify 2.0s, the UB52s. These reference I think actually deserve to be higher than those, so move that around a little bit. Somewhere around there, that's about right. And last but not least, best overall sound regardless of price. I'm going to place these again here between the Unify reference and the Unify 2.0s. Best floor standing speakers, I'm going to have to put these HECO Auroras somewhere here. I think that's about the right spot. The Monolith Encore T6 towers have more bass, and I'm a sucker for bass. If maybe you prefer the looks of the HECO Aurora or the soundstage, then you can do this. That's fine. Either way, not a big deal. So the HECO Auroras are $549 each, which is $1,100 for a pair. Best under $2,500, I would say, I don't know, these SingCell Alphas are pretty nuts. Again, I like bass. These have a ton of bass. But yeah, somewhere around here. If you want better imaging, of course, you're going to get better imaging with the HECO Aurora 700. So I think this is about right. Best overall sound, regardless of price. I'm going to put the floor standers maybe somewhere around here. I think that's a fair place. There you go. So as of right now, these are $649. I'm going to place these in under $1,000 category. I'm going to have to put it, 3,000 micro is pretty impressive. Hits a little deeper. Yeah, maybe something like this. The Aurora might have more output just because it's a larger speaker. Depends on what you want. If you want louder, you can do this. If you prefer more deep bass extension, you can do that. So as far as best overall, regardless of price, I'll put it right here. There you have it. So there you have it. That's a HECO Aurora series from the folks at Audio Advice. They also sent me this cool shirt. Pretty awesome, right? Anyway, if you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. That's it. Take care. Bye-bye.